A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. Just a reminder, we will not have a show on Thursday because I will be in my car heading down to Atlanta, Georgia for the NRA annual meetings, but we will have some interviews for you on Friday. I don't know that we're going to do like a whole show with the Recidivist report, armed citizen story, and things of that nature, but we will be posting several interviews over the course of Friday to the Bearing Arms website. So make sure you check those out. I'm looking forward to being on the ground in Atlanta here in a little bit more than 24 hours. Actually, looking forward to the drive, too. Should be a nice drive most of the way. I have been warned about Atlanta traffic, but I guess the last few miles may be the worst part of the journey. All right. But the destination is worth it. So today we're going to be talking about a new story at the Los Angeles Times. Kevin Rector reporting on what led to the DOJ's investigation of the LA Sheriff's Department and its policies and practices when it comes to issuing concealed carry permits. The impetus for this, I think, really is the California Rifle and Pistol Association versus LASD lawsuit. Now, that's CRPA, Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, Gun Owners of California, Gun Owners Foundation. Those are the five organizational plaintiffs. And then there are individual plaintiffs who are suing as well. Suing the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, suing the city of Laverne, California, over both the permitting delays as well as the excessive fees that are being charged. And Rector's reporting does nothing to dissuade me from the notion that that lawsuit really was the impetus for this. But it's not the only reason why we are seeing the DOJ investigation. In fact, Rector starts out his story talking about something that happened in 2022, right after the Bruin decision came down. He says at a meeting of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors in July of that year, again, just weeks after Bruin, now former supervisor Sheila Kuhl called for a, quote, deep dive into the LA County Sheriff's Department's gun permitting process. Now, that sounds great, right? But that she wasn't hoping to ensure that this shall issue process would be quick or easy or anything like that at all. As a matter of fact, the Rector says Kuhl's 2022 proposal, approved by the board, ordered then Sheriff Alex Villanueva not to change the county's gun permitting process until state and county attorneys could weigh in, and asked the county auditor to issue a report on potential improvements. Villanueva, Rector writes, showed little interest in complying. He had been bragging of increasing permits and said that the department was retooling its process to provide even more, estimating that the total could jump to from less than 3,200 to as many as 50,000. 2 months later, so again, still in 2022, the department announced that it was investigating, quote, irregularities in the permitting process and a, quote, possible long-term scheme to defraud county residents. Soon after, the Los Angeles Times published an investigation showing that some of Villanueva's political supporters had received permits much more quickly than the average applicant, some with the assistance of deputies working directly for Villanueva. Now, I don't have a dog in this fight. I will note that Sheriff Villanueva at the time was up for re-election. He lost that sheriff's race. And he kind of had tack to the right on the issue, particularly the issue of a right to carry. At the same time, we know that these may-issue systems that existed under California law, and again, in 8 other states too, or 7 other states, fostered a culture of abuse. Because these sheriffs had the discretion to approve or deny anybody based on this subjective determination about whether or not they had a justifiable need to carry a gun, it not only opened up the door to giving permits to friends and family members, calling in those who wanted to call in a favor, but in Santa Clara County, for instance, there was an actual pay-to-play scheme, or I guess pay-to-carry scheme. A sheriff, then Sheriff Lori Smith, resigned a couple of days before she was convicted in a civil trial of corruption. One of the sheriff's captains who served directly under her been convicted of bribery. Another, I believe, was acquitted on bribery charges. But the evidence is pretty clear that in Santa Clara County, at least, and I suspect in many other counties as well, the may-issue system did lead to law enforcement, including sheriffs, playing favorites with applicants. That's not the primary reason why shall issue is better than may issue, but it's a big reason why. And again, now that that process has stopped, right, now that Los Angeles is operating under a shall issue system, supposedly that problem's been resolved. But there are other problems. It is still taking 18 months in most cases for an applicant to get approved for a carry permit if they apply in Los Angeles County. And the current sheriff, Robert Luna, told the Los Angeles Times that the backlog has now been reduced to about 4,000 pending applications, that the department is, quote, doing a lot better than we have in years, saying, like everything else, we're fixing a lot of problems, trying to be efficient. Rector writes, in 2023 and 2024, the first 2 calendar years after Luna took office, records show the department issued more than 10,000 permits, a roughly twofold increase over the number issued in 2021 and 2022. At the same time, Sheriff's Department data show permit rejections spiked to 480 during the 2022 application surge, then fell to 438 in 2023, 327 last year. So again, a small fraction, right? Less than 1%. Excuse me, I shouldn't say less than 1%. That would be, about 5% of the applications being rejected, which actually is substantially higher than the rejections for most shall issue systems. So that in itself may indicate that there's a problem with the practices of the LA Sheriff's Department. Why are these people being denied? One of the plaintiffs in CRPA versus LASD was denied because his gun was stolen out of his car. So not only should the DOJ be investigating the wait times that people are having to go through, but they should be investigating these denials as well. How many of them are because someone's a prohibited person, can't legally possess a firearm? And again, how many of these denials are subjective in nature, even though subjectivity is supposed to be taken out of the equation, right? Is there a larger, I don't want to say conspiracy, but is the anti-gun ideology that is so inherent in LA politics also one of the reasons for these waiting games that are being played? You know, we hear talk, well, it's just a staffing issue. We don't have the personnel. Okay. Well, if that's the case, then why aren't you being funded to the point that you've got enough personnel to address the situation, right? Rector says a couple of days after the Justice Department announced its probe, former Sheriff Alex Villanueva commented online, writing that evidence suggests that Sheriff Luna and the Board of Supervisors are slow-walking the permit process deliberately to circumvent the Bruin decision. Now, he points to Sheila Kuhn's comments in 2022 about, hey, don't adopt shall issue yet. Wait until Rob Bonta weighs in. Wait until the county attorney's office weighs in. But I think you can also just look at the funding for the sheriff's department. Now, Sheriff Luna does have the ability to shuffle personnel around. And in fact, he says that a couple of years ago, there were anywhere between 3 to 6 full-time staffers working on processing applications. Now he says, I think it's up to 13 staffers with 2 more that have been temporarily assigned. And that's all fine and good. But if it's still taking a year and a half to process someone's application, clearly that's not enough, right? So I suspect that there's going to be more than enough blame to go around when the DOJ's investigation of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department is complete. But there are also so many more targets for the DOJ Civil Rights Division to investigate. In fact, as Rector points out, LA County isn't the only issue. LA City arguably is even worse. Last month, the California Rifle and Pistol Association sent a letter to the LAPD and the Los Angeles City Council warning that it would sue if the LAPD did not immediately come up with additional resources to bring down the wait times for permits, which, according to CRPA, averaging more than 18 months in the city. Again, under California law, it's supposed to be done in about 120 days. not 18 months. On March 31st, LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell responded with his own letter, writing that both the requested and issued permits have, quote, increased exponentially in the last 2 years, and that the department is taking steps to process more applications and bring down wait times. McDonnell said that the LAPD was lending additional officers to the permit unit, that the county has started using, and like the county, has started using this cloud-based software called Permitium, which he says was already enabling the department to process more applications. But he said the LAPD is clearly struggling, or at least Rector says it's clearly struggling. Other officials have acknowledged, with wait times for permits approaching 4 years in some cases. I mean, that means that people who applied before Bruin was even decided, in some cases, have not had their application approved or denied. They've just been stuck in limbo. That is, and listen, I realize we live in outrage culture, so the use of the word outrageous is, I think, overused quite a bit. But this truly is outrageous. How can you argue that that is not an infringement on somebody's fundamental right to keep and bear arms when they have been kept waiting for 4 years for a government-issued permission slip to exercise a fundamental civil right? And I mean, at this point, honestly, as much as I'd like to see this resolved, I hope CRPA sues the bejeebers out of the city of LA, right along with the lawsuit that they've already filed against the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, because that is just unconscionable. And again, if it's not these untenable delays in processing applications, it is these exorbitant fees that are being charged in places like Laverne, Santa Clara County, where the cost of a permit could run more than $1,000. And these permits, by the way, are good for 2 years. That's one of the other issues that the sheriff's departments are complaining about. That this 2-year process basically means that, the sheriff's department are having to do double the work than they would if the permits lasted for, let's say, 4 years or 5 years, because they're constantly stuck in this cycle of, renewing permits, which, again, you have to apply for. It's not automatic, right? And that just increases the backlog when new people are applying as well. Now, there is legislation in California that would increase the length of time that a permit is valid from 2 to 4 years. It was originally voted down. I think it was the Assembly Public Safety Committee that voted it down. And there was actually such an outcry that it got brought back up. It passed out of committee. We'll see if it gets anywhere in the legislature. That would be some help for gun owners. It wouldn't fix all of the issues here, but it would be of some help to gun owners. It would, certainly make the cost of these permits a little bit more affordable. It would make it a little bit easier for law enforcement, again, to process applications in a timely manner. But that alone wouldn't solve the underlying problems that we're seeing in places like Los Angeles. And frankly, it remains to be seen whether the anti-gun lawmakers in Sacramento would ever take even such a modest step to make it easier to exercise your right to carry. I'm not convinced that that's the case, but we will wait and see. And in the meantime, not only does the DOJ investigation continue, but CRPA versus LASD continues as well. There was a partial injunction that was issued, specifically relating to the prohibition on non-resident carry in California, right? So there's no process by which a non-resident could get a California permit, and California doesn't recognize any other permits. So if you live in one of the 49 other states and you visit California, there's no way for you to exercise your right to keep and bear arms. A judge recognized that that's a problem. And so as of yesterday, there is a process by which non-residents can apply for a California permit. It's not easy, but it's theoretically possible now for you or I to obtain a California permit. I will say I'm not going to bother. One of the things that you've got to do is you've got to apply in a jurisdiction in which you plan to spend time in over the next 12 months. Well, I don't know that I'm going to be going to California over the next 12 months. And if I did go to California, most likely I'd be visiting Los Angeles County, where, again, there's an average of an 18-month delay. So if I plan on visiting the next year and it takes 18 months to get a permit issued, what's the point, right? But you also have to abide by all of the California licensing laws. So you have to take a California training course, which may or may not be offered near you. You have to complete a live fire portion of your training at a range near you, which, depending on where you live, may not exist, right? You've got to submit your fingerprints. Depending on what jurisdiction you apply in, you may have to take a psychological exam. According to this order by the court, you should be able to do that online, or it's up to the licensing authority to find a place within 75 miles of where you live where you could take that psychological test or the live fire training exercise for that matter. What happens if those don't exist within 75 miles? I don't know. I have a feeling we'll figure it out. So we are slowly making progress, even beyond the DOJ's investigation. I don't think that this order by the judge, I think Judge Carolyn Peace Garnett, I think is Sherilyn Peace Garnett. I don't think it's enough to satisfy our right to keep and bear arms. I don't think it comes anywhere close to satisfying the Second Amendment. It is an improvement over the status quo, but it alone does not suffice to ensure that we, the people, can exercise our fundamental right to bear arms in all 50 states of the Union. For that, unfortunately, since the Supreme Court has said that licensing regimes are constitutional, you're going to need national right to carry reciprocity, either established through court order, which I don't know how likely that is, given how gun-shy the Supreme Court seems to be, or through legislative action. And again, I think the big challenge there is going to be the Senate. How do you avoid having to get 60 votes on such a measure? So progress is slow. I won't say it's steady because it is somewhat uneven, but it is being made. And hopefully, between CRPA versus LASD, potentially the new lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles and the LAPD, and the DOJ's investigation, we will continue to see things improve, not only for gun owners in California, but for those gun owners who reside outside the state who plan on visiting at some point in the near future. All right, let's move on to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there with a case out of Portland, Maine, where 4 of 5 suspects in a 2022 shooting have been sentenced. None of them really got a substantial amount of time behind bars, I have to say. In fact, 2 of these individuals charged in the 2022 shooting were given jail time and probation just this month. 24-year-old Noor Aden and 21-year-old Kisan Abdi, both sentenced on April 10th. Now, Aden was sentenced to 16 years in prison, which is significant. But that sentence was immediately cut in half, 8 years suspended, on charges of attempted murder, aggravated attempted murder, and criminal conspiracy. And then once he gets out, he's got to serve 4 years probation. Aden was also charged with violating the conditions of his release, so he's going to be put on probation for another 3 years. His attorney said, well, he got almost 2 years in jail, and he's getting credit for all the time that he's been in. So the 8-year sentence is not going to be 8 years behind bars. That's basically knocked down to 6 years. You get time off for good behavior, and that 16-year sentence could be served in 4 years, because his attorney says that he will likely be released at age 28 or 29. It's amazing. Meanwhile, Abdi, convicted of aggravated assault, he pleaded guilty, sentenced to 6 years in prison, but all of that was suspended except for 9 months. And because he had spent that much time behind bars awaiting trial, his sentence is complete. He's already on probation. Essentially got time served. According to the Press Herald, 2 other defendants in the case, Jaheim Whiting and Jabri Myers, pleaded guilty. They were sentenced roughly a year ago. Another individual, Abukar Abdi, who's 24, charged with a criminal conspiracy and criminal threatening. He is on house arrest. A sentencing date has not yet been set for him. Jaheim Whiting pleaded guilty to criminal threatening. He got 3 years in prison, all but 9 months suspended. He was sentenced in February 2024. Could be released as early as February of, I say next year. But if he only got 9 years or 9 months in prison, I'm surprised he's not out already. 23-year-old Jabri Myers pleaded guilty to attempted aggravated assault, sentenced to just 3 years probation in May of last year. And again, this was a shooting that spread throughout this apartment complex. Nobody was injured, thankfully, but they found rounds in several rooms of several apartments, including the bedroom of a 1-year-old child. So it is by sheer happenstance and luck that nobody was seriously injured or killed in this incident. But it is par for the course, I guess, that none of the defendants going to receive a substantial amount of time behind bars for their activities. All right, today's armed citizen story from North Carolina, where a Pineville homeowner found some burglars hiding in a cupboard and held them at gunpoint until police arrived. I didn't realize that grown-ups could hide in cupboards. This was a couple weeks ago, back on April 13th. Bell County Sheriff's deputies and Pineville police officers. I said, by the way, this is Pineville, North Carolina. This was actually Pineville, Kentucky. I got my Pinevilles confused there. They received reports about a possible burglary around 1 o'clock in the morning. They responded to this home. They found that the home had been ransacked. And when they got there, deputies encountered a man named Charles Jason Hoskins, age 50, standing in the back door. The homeowner said he did not know who Hoskins was. He was just there. According to the sheriff's office, Hoskins told authorities that a man and a woman paid him $50 to give him a ride to this home. The man and woman nowhere to be found. So Hoskins was arrested, taken to the county jail. Homeowners there at the home, deputies leave, thinking that the problem has been resolved. And he said he was sitting in his recliner when he heard something moving in a kid's bedroom. And so when he went to investigate, he found a 47-year-old Angela Caldwell and 40-year-old Lester Smith hiding inside a cupboard under a pile of clothes. Yeah. The homeowner grabbed his gun, called 911, waited for the officers to come back. It was later determined that they were the couple that Hoskins let in the car for $50. All three of them now charged with engaging in organized crime, second-degree burglary. The 40-year-old man who was found in the cupboard, Lester Smith, also charged with 3 failure to appear warrants, possession of methamphetamine, and first-degree promoting contraband. The homeowner not facing any charges. Why would he? But we can laugh about this, but man, that had to be a scary situation, right? I mean, you think the problem has been resolved. You're sitting back in your chair, and all of a sudden, you hear noises from the other room. Thankfully, again, this individual did have a firearm, was able to protect himself, and thankfully, the threat did not rise to the point that that gun had to be discharged. Now, finally, today, our good deed of the day. In the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. I got to say, I generally try to, and it's not that I'm not an animal lover. I love animals, but I generally try to keep our good Samaritan stories, our good deed stories to humans helping humans, right? I don't know why. I don't. I could not give you a reason other than I don't want to. Every day I could have stories about, somebody who saved a puppy or somebody who helped, little ducks walk across the street. I'm going to make an exception today for this story. Florida man dives into lake to save wounded eagle. This is the symbol of America, man. And that is exactly why I'm making the exception, because yes, bald eagle is the symbol of America. Lakewood Ranch, Florida. It was this past weekend on Saturday. A man said he dove into a lake with no hesitation to rescue a wounded bald eagle. Doug Hay, 69 years of age, says he's been around animals his whole life, says he loves animals. Said he and his wife were sitting in their living room when they heard a crash. And so he looked out onto the lake, which is, just adjacent to his backyard there, and he saw an eagle there. He said he knows that eagles can't swim. There's another eagle circling above the lake. He suspected that the two eagles had been fighting. He said he acted without any hesitation whatsoever. Took off his shirt, threw off his flip-flops, dove into the water. He said, I threw my phone to the ground, too. My wife picked up the phone and started videoing it, because that's what we do these days, right? He said the eagle landed smack in the middle of the 100-yard wide lake. He said he also knew that the lake was home to a 7-foot alligator, because this is Florida. But he said he wasn't too concerned about the gator. I mean, good for him. I would be. He said he grabbed the eagle, said it jumped on his forearm with his talons, which caused a few minor injuries. He said, I barely made it back to shore because I was pretty tired. Contacted a wildlife refuge in Venice, Florida. They came out a couple of hours later and took the eagle in to be rehabbed. Pam DeFow, executive director of the Wildlife Center of Southwest Florida, said the eagle's stable. Obviously, the wound is very extensive. It was an open hole close to the thoracic cavity. Over the next couple of weeks, primary focus is going to be pain management and antibiotics for the infection. There will be physical therapy for the eagle to help the eagle fly again. Pretty amazing that the eagle was saved. And DeFow says she's thrilled about it, but she also says, the key thing is safety first. If you injure yourself, you won't be able to rescue the animal anyway. Doug did a very brave thing. She said, is it something we would recommend for somebody else? Probably not. But he did save the life of that bird, so that is definitely to be commended. Well, absolutely. In the right place, at the right time, willing able to do the right thing to save that symbol of freedom. Doug Hay, we thank you for your very, very good, brave, and kind of, I don't want to, kind of crazy good deed. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you, as always, for being a part of the program. I am looking forward to seeing you again on Friday. And if you are going to be in Atlanta for the NRA annual meeting this weekend, stop by booth 665. We're going to be part of the Voices of the Second Amendment there on the ground in Atlanta. So looking forward to seeing everybody who's going to be there. And again, we'll be sharing interviews at least on Friday. We're going to be posting some interviews, and then we'll probably save some of Friday's interviews, all of Saturday's interviews for next week. We'll bring them back and we'll share them with you once we get back in the ground in Central Virginia. And make sure you check out BearingArms.com throughout the day tomorrow. I'll be driving down. Tom Knighton's going to hold down the fort. We've got contributions from Ryan Petty, John Petrolino as well. And we will see you back here soon. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.